And welcome to the ResearchWorks podcast, brought to you in association with Curtin University and the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dayna and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and together we will interview world-leading researchers in the area of child health to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
Hello everyone, welcome back. We are so glad that you could join us for what is our last episode of 2021.
Oh my goodness, that's 37 episodes that we've recorded, and we're just so grateful for all the tremendous support from all of you in our community about the value of this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're both really glad that this medium and this method of knowledge translation that we've started is so useful and accessible for health professionals, researchers, and importantly, parents and families as well. And I think it's, I'm speaking for both of us here, Dayna, but I think it's probably the sole reason that we started this. We just wanted to help get the word out about some great work that's been done in our field. Yeah. And we wanted to provide some very practical take-home messages and strategies on how we can implement it into our practice.
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea, wasn't it? Right from the beginning, it was just to find a way to get more research and information out there in a really tangible way.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've learned so much from this process. Oh. I just think about the knowledge base that I had a year ago compared to where I am now.
Yeah.
In a range of areas, I think my knowledge has just absolutely skyrocketed. And I just love speaking to all the authors of these papers because they've just invested so much into these areas, and to have the opportunity to talk to them is actually really inspiring. Hey,
yeah, for sure, and such a privilege to, have some of their time. They're all really busy people, and they all took time out of their busy schedules to speak with us. And I feel really grateful for that. And being on maternity leave for most of the year while we've been recording, this podcast has been something that's really helped me to, stay on top of the knowledge base and learn as I've been on leave, which has been enormously helpful for my brain.
You are incredible, Ash. The fact that you've been doing this all through mat leave, and probably I'm not sure what your sleep is like, but you're always looking very chirpy. We're talking to people from all over the world, so it's morning and nighttime. We're here whenever they're available. So it's been really cool.
It has, and no one else I'd rather do it with.
Thanks, Ash. Well, I've absolutely loved this entire year, as you can hear from what we're saying as well. And so what we thought we'd do today is to sort of do a bit of a wrap up. Now, I know that Ed took complete control of the microphones last week and just recorded his own episode.
Yeah, did we sign off on that?
I'm not sure that we did, and we received.
Hey!
Oh, he's here.
I have to admit that it's actually a lot harder than it looks. So, with that, I will leave you to the rest of your recap.
Well, we thought we'd just really talk about some of the real themes of what was spoken about, because I've spoken to quite a few clinicians who have just given some feedback, and it's like, well, how do I put all this into practice? We've got all of this knowledge, and there is lots of knowledge, and to be able to apply that is another skill in itself. And I think being able to talk about it is really helpful.
Yes, definitely. And I think, when we went back and looked at all of the 37 episodes that have come out this season, and we looked at we pulled out the take-home messages and the strategies that clinicians might be able to use to implement, this evidence into clinical practice. There were some really strong trends for the direction of therapeutic interventions. And I think, now more than ever, we can really start to identify all of the active ingredients that really support meaningful changes for families. And, when we pulled out those take-home messages, they kind of fell into two kind of big themes, didn't they, Dayna?
They did. We're such researchers, aren't we?
always analysing.
Always analysing. So the first theme was really around the definition of evidence-based practice. And this was something that was really, it was kind of cool that it was introduced so early on. Both Ina Novak and Andrew Whitehouse really talked about what the definition of that was. So that we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then the second theme that we're going to try to cover off as well is the lovely F words.
Our favourite.
Oh, my goodness. Our favourite F words. And how all of the episodes really fit into that. Because, again, it's the active ingredients like you're talking about.
Yep.
So let's just go back to the definition of what evidence-based practice is.
Yeah, and what a privilege to start our podcast journey with, those two leading researchers in their field, really, Professor Andrew Whitehouse and Professor Iona Novak. And the wisdom that they imparted on us, I think, was just incredible.
It was,
And, Andrew really touched on those three components of evidence-based practice and what that means. The first is that, what we're doing is ethical.
Yep.
The second is that, we're really trying to do no harm in what we're doing. So we need to use the evidence base to make sure that what we're doing kind of ticks both of those boxes, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. And it was something that Iona Novak really brought up was this grey area of harm. And I don't think I thought about it in quite those terms before.
Yeah.
And she talked about, I think as clinicians, we talk about adverse events being the potential for us to cause, some serious injury or harm. But it's also harmful to be taking children out to do therapy every day, all day, if we don't know there's enough evidence to support it, because they should be, as Andrew said, children, families should be families, and they should have the opportunity to go to school, have friends, have family. Oh my goodness, there's F words coming again.
Yeah. And, investing time and money into things that aren't evidence-based potentially means that you're missing out on other developmental opportunities at home, at school, with friends. Again, all of the F words come back into it again. Yeah.
So I think that sort of sets a lot of the foundations of it. And then he spoke a lot about what constitutes evidence-based practice. So the first one is the patient values and knowing what the child and the family really do value and want. The second part of it is our clinical expertise and our skills. And the third one is the empirical evidence, the research evidence.
Yeah.
And you can't do one without the other. You actually have to have all three.
Yeah.
And I love how he was saying if you're just basing it on just clinical expertise without the evidence, you're in a fair bit of trouble because now it's just opinion-based. It's not based on any research. And there might not be research specifically to the child that you're seeing, but you can still combine your expertise with as much of the available empirical research evidence as possible.
Yeah.
And that's evidence-based practice. It's the combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautifully explained, Dayna.
Oh,
and I think,
I just loved it.
A lot of the episodes that followed on from Andrew and before Andrew and Iona helped us to kind of bring to the forefront some of the most recent knowledge and evidence. And we know that that's really important so that we can, better identify, refer on and employ different types of intervention strategies. So knowing, what you're capable of doing, knowing what might be better suited for, somebody else to be doing.
That's right.
And of course, knowing what the evidence base says is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And to as an example of all that extra knowledge that we have now, this means if you're seeing these children in your practice, then you have a better idea potentially of understanding maybe the family journey or understanding where you can refer to, like you just said. So, I love when Magnus Pullman was talking about the co-occurrence of autism, ADHD and intellectual disability in cerebral palsy. So interesting. So when you are treating, you have to think of the potential of the co-occurrence of all of these and all the other strategies that you can employ when treating. Love 100%. That.
Yep. The other episode with Professor Gareth Bainham around rare diseases, that was, a real eye-opener for me in terms of, just describing the diagnostic odyssey that he, phrased that families go on when they have a rare disease. And,
That's right.
If they're coming to see you in the practice, in your practice, the hundreds of other appointments that they might be going to and the countless number of, hours and years they might have spent getting to a point to find an answer that they may not have that yet.
Right.
And to kind of be sensitive to that when you're talking with them and planning with them, their programs.
Absolutely. Another example of how knowledge is power in those circumstances and very similar to that as well as Mel Licari of DCD, that's similar kind of, another area of expertise for you as well, Ash, in terms of, that diagnostic odyssey and who can you refer and the role that allied health clinicians can have in supporting, their ability to get the diagnosis as well as to support them in the core skills that they need as well. Yeah. And the other one I really liked was in the current climate of all things COVID-19, we had Asher Bowen, and we talked about not only COVID-19, but also CMV, cytomegalovirus, and the role that has, and just the importance of good hand hygiene. Like it was just
Never
really good to understand that. And the role that we have to play, and how us as clinicians can make sure we're looking after ourselves as well when we're treating children. And that was also just good to sort of just to turn that a little bit into things of what we can do as well.
Yeah, and really practical strategies.
Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Yeah, wash your hands. They're all things that we should be doing. And, there's so many more. We had Ros Ward talk about the role of speech pathologists and infant vocalizations really early on, really empowering speeches again.
Yeah. I loved that episode for, shining a light on speech and communication development. We talked a lot about, the different windows of opportunity for development that occur really early on. And, Ros is so passionate about that. I certainly learned a lot from talking with her. We also, had the pleasure of talking to Sue McCabe about the impact of sleep and sleep physiology. And I go to bed with my socks on now.
I was going to say that too. Sometimes I heat up a little hot pack as well, and if I'm having trouble going to sleep. So that was a great one.
You'd have to listen to the episode to find out why that's important.
That was so good. And I loved the whole co-design. If you're looking at anything to do with equipment or IT, you can't just implement them on your own. And David Hobbs does really shine a light in that, isn't it? There's models of what you need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and a huge framework around the implementation of equipment and technology, and that words that we use to describe things have meaning, and it's important that you are describing things in the right way to families, but also to other therapists and clinicians, so that language starts to become commonplace and is accurate and representative of what the technology is doing. The other insight into technology that we had was in our episode with Dave Parsons.
Yes.
Yeah, where we talked about the implementation of an app in terms of supporting therapy for children with autism in regional areas. And that was really interesting for me because it's a regional populations are often overlooked in research because they're quite tricky to get access to, and it's hard for them to meet the criteria for studies that often happen in metro areas. So and he showed that there is a benefit to using technology to support therapy, but I think that it needs to be supplementary to, not in replacement of that face-to-face delivery.
And that was really cool to actually understand that as well. And that went back to what David Hobbs was saying in terms of, the recommendations for future is to co-design and looking at the end user when you're using technology. And I think we can all really relate to that now, can't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's just an example of all the increased knowledge we've had, that part of that we're talking about in evidence-based practice, increasing our knowledge base.
Yes.
And that is our clinical expertise, and that's what we can keep building on. And the other components now we're going to talk about is, the actual research and the evidence for it. And this is where the F words come in.
Yay. And, to use another F word, I think they're really foundational throughout all of child health and child health research, and, combining our clinical expertise that's informed by research finding is really essential for us to be evidence-based. And the F words is something that we should have in the forefront of our minds when we're
all the time,
designing and delivering interventions for families.
Absolutely. And as we sort of saw as well, it really doesn't matter what diagnosis.
No.
It is for child health.
Yeah.
And we can apply that everywhere. So if you're a clinician working out there with a very varied caseload, if you have a framework of F words and you start to put all of these things that we've been talking about into your toolbox, you have so much power there in providing evidence-based practice. And that's all there is to it, really, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about how important it is to set meaningful goals. And I think that was something that was, a really common theme throughout a lot of our episodes, but particularly when we spoke to, you know, Iona Novak and Michelle Jackman about the clinical guidelines that came out. That was such an exciting episode because, you know, we've been waiting for those for a little while, and it was really exciting to see what they are and how we can implement them into our practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how that's now a clinical guideline, is to set meaningful goals. And the purpose of that is function and fun. And I love how when we talk to our dear friends in Brazil, Egmar Longo and Ana Carolina de Campos, is, you know, it didn't matter where you are in the world, you can be doing these things, and practically within the context of your environment and your culture. And that was pretty huge.
A universal language.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose the thing that really came through that was really clear through all those conversations is that we need to be task specific and really focusing on that activity and participation level, and that whole downstream effect doesn't really seem to, you know, that we've got to be thinking more specific is what came through. Hey,
yeah, definitely, and particularly in our conversation with Iona, but you know, in all of the subsequent conversations as well. You know that, and I think it's one of the recommendations is that you know, goals should be task specific and meaningful.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, if you know what the task is, your intervention should be tailored for that. Yeah. And it might be that there might be some body structure and function based interventions that we spoke about, which we'll go into in a bit, but they were all still based on function. They all still came back to function. So it was always very meaningful in that kind of way as well.
Yeah. We also spoke a bit about environmental enrichment, and, you know, two of the episodes that come to mind are Jenny Downs, but also Alison Salt and her episode on vision as well. I think, you know, both of those really highlighted, you know, how simple tweaks and changes to the environment can have really substantial benefits for children when we're delivering interventions.
Yeah, and I love that as well that you've brought that up, because same sort of thing is that for environmental enrichment, what Jenny Downs is talking about is that intervention was for rare disease and it was done in China. Yeah. And looking at the real significant results you can have just by environmental enrichment. Incredible.
Yeah. So I think both of those had some really key strategies that therapists can implement into, you know, their everyday practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, going back to that sort of body structure and function, you know, we did have quite a range of people who had a lot of expertise in addressing body structure and function, but then implementing interventions that were activity and participation based.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had Dr. Jane Valentine talk to us about botulinum neurotoxin type A or Botox. We also had Sian Williams, who talked to us a little bit about Botox, but, you know, the subsequent impact on muscle morphology and how that translated into, you know, outcomes around activity.
Yeah, that's right. That was really cool. Then we had our American friends talk about dystonia. This was very high-level discussions with neurology. So we had Terry Sanger and Buma Aravamuthan talking about DBS and dystonia and gait. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I learned a lot from both of them.
Same.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And both a pleasure to speak to as well.
Yeah.
And then we had Belinda McLean talk to us about sensation and function, which was a really interesting you know, episode and really interesting kind of approach to take to practice as well.
Yep. And again, being so task specific. So if you are wanting to improve sensation, and that's something we should all be thinking about when we're working with children with cerebral palsy, is we need to address sensation. So you need a sensation-based intervention. Yep.
So Belle spoke to us about that in a lot of detail.
That was really cool.
If sensation is something that you are interested in, and we, as you said, we should all be interested in.
That's right.
Then I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that. And then another one that I found really eye-opening was our chat with Michael Trevorrow about the relationship between the spinal cord and upper limb function.
Yeah, that was great as well. Like that relationship again from the anatomical perspective, so very body structure and function. Yeah. But the purpose of it was really looking at somatosensory functioning as well of the upper limb, and again relating to function. So it all just comes down, even though it's very body structure and function based on the ICF, the purpose is still function. Yeah. And that came through really strongly through all of this, didn't it?
For sure. Yeah. And then, you know, we had some really interesting episodes that focused around participation.
Oh, yes.
Which, you know, is something that we're both really passionate about. And it was wonderful to speak to Claire Willis and Sarah Reedman about participation, because it's something, you know, that they are really kind of emerging leaders in this area of research, and you know, the key ingredients that you need to ensure that participation is meaningful for children.
That's right.
With cerebral palsy, acquired brain injury,
that's right.
You know, all those different diagnoses. They're really kind of paved the way for you to implement that into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, fun. I mean, it sounds so simple, doesn't it, Ash?
Yeah. Make it meaningful.
Make it meaningful.
And make it fun.
Yep, that's right. I think this is so vital. And then so to sort of put all of that into context as well, we had some great authors talk about the value of family. And, you know, you can't think about any of this. You can't talk about child health without thinking about family. Yeah. It's so core, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, we have to think about the whole family. And as you say, it's something that we probably do instinctively, but, you know, when we are designing interventions, or, you know, if we're planning a therapy program for a child, we have to appreciate the impact that what we're doing will have on the family. And it's not just, you know, what we're delivering, but the logistics around that, and, you know, how families fit that into a really busy schedule.
Yeah, that's right. So you know what? It is evidence-based to provide tea and coffee for families.
Yes, Jodie Armstrong taught us that.
Absolutely. And that was so highly related to parent stress, and, you know, providing that avenue. It's not a small thing. That is evidence-based.
Yeah.
That is so important.
Yeah. And Rachel Byrne spoke to us so beautifully about how we can best deliver information to families. And, you know, those communication strategies are so important. And I think, you know, there's a lot of takeaways from her episode that we can use to, you know, improve how we communicate with families and kids.
Yeah, 100%. And then from family, the next one that you always think of from there is friends.
Yeah.
Yep. And that was really vital as well. And that came through in a few different diagnoses as well.
That's right.
Yep.
So we spoke to Vivian Travelos about mental well-being in children or youth with neuromuscular disorders, and how to balance out that need for therapy and the impact on being able to receive the right kind of support from their friends. And, you know, we've said many times before that if you are, you know, providing therapy, you need to be mindful of the fact that that's taking time away from other opportunities for, you know, socializing, for other aspects of the child's development. So you need to find that balance.
Yeah, that's right. And scheduling that and having that conversation and supporting that with families, again, that is evidence-based. That is really important. And Professor Sonia Girdler spoke about that in autistic adolescents and social skills training for contact. Again, an intervention purely designed around supporting social skills and interaction in adolescents, which is so vital. And again, very task specific.
Very task specific, and, you know, touched really nicely on some of the ethical considerations around delivering programs, you know, with a focus on autistic youth. But yeah, I think some broader take home messages around that in that episode as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one that, you know, is my bias, that's for sure, is fitness.
Yes.
Not that I'm still working on my fitness.
I should be working on my fitness.
That's what I'll aim for during the holidays.
Yeah.
But fitness was something that, you know, we're both really driven by in terms of the population that we work with.
Yeah.
And we started the podcast quite early on talking with Oliver Verschuren all the way from the Netherlands. And he really set the scene, didn't he, about this whole day matters approach.
Yeah. And opportunities at, you know, lots of different points throughout the day to provide just an opportunity to be active.
Yeah.
And, you know, we know from other work as well that kids really value that.
They do. Absolutely. And you just really need to look at three components, and that's sedentary, physical activity, and sleep. And let's look at the proportions for that, and let's make sure we have the best sleep possible and put the strategies in place. So listen to Sue McCabe's podcast for that one. And then, you know, some of the strategies we can do that really do go across all GMFCS levels as well, don't they?
Yeah. We also spoke to Sarah Reedman, you know, as well as participation about, you know, this idea of motivational profiling and how that really underpins the interventions we provide, and the power of a really good therapeutic relationship to enhance motivation and the benefits that you see in terms of your therapeutic outcomes as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also then from there, you know, spoke to some people about very specific interventions for CP. So we had Rachel Tuvey with regards to bike riding, and we had Annie Chappell with regards to running. Some very specific interventions there that really do target a really core component for our kids, and fitness is a big part of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then the other F word that we touched on is future.
Yeah, future. Oh my goodness. I think you always talk about future so much at the end of the year. You always think about the future, don't you? And what was really cool about the papers we talked about with future is that it was really contextual to the populations that we work with and what we can do right now to influence better outcomes in the future. And we had the lovely Nuala Gibson and Kate Langdon join us to talk about the vitalness of looking at all these areas that we can influence respiratory health in individuals with cerebral palsy, because they quoted that the risk of death from respiratory causes of adults with CP is 14 times higher than adults of no disability. So there is such a role to play, and physical activity was one of those recommendations as well that we can do across all GMFCS levels right now.
Yeah, and they had some really practical resources and strategies that can be implemented into practice as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that was cool.
The other interview that we did with Orica Johnson, which reported data over 50 years, was really, I think, a bit of an insight into the future for children with cerebral palsy, and such valuable longitudinal data that she talked to us about, that this idea that supporting people that may potentially lose independent functional mobility, and what that looks like as they get older, and ensuring that GPs are involved in terms of, reviewing medications and things, because as she explained to us, something like epilepsy, there were, a proportion of her sample who were diagnosed with epilepsy as children no longer had that in adulthood, and, what that looks like, and, constant communication with a team of medical and clinical professionals is really important for families.
Yeah, and the vitalness is us as primary health practitioners and allied health is to be able to help make those connections and know about these things, so that when we're talking to our families, we go, hey, have you seen a GP? Maybe it'd be really good to connect. And, those are some simple things that we can do that is evidence-based. And I guess that the last component of, we've gone through all the F words now, but the last component of what evidence-based practice is, we know about the knowledge, and that's really important. And then there's the clinical expertise with that, and what the evidence base says around that, what the empirical data says. And the last part of it is so vital, is what do the families want? What do the patients want? And Jen Pryor was incredible in bringing it all together, wasn't she?
For sure. Yeah, I could speak to Jen all day. She's just so inspiring, and, articulates her experiences so beautifully. And I have learned and continue to learn a lot from Jen. And, having the patient and family goals and values at the forefront of everything that you're doing is just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there you go. I think we've pretty much given a big wrap over the whole of the 37 episodes. But hopefully that's really helpful for you. Just always coming back down to what is evidence-based practice, looking at those three components. You can't do one without the other, and you can always be grounded in evidence. And we need to do that. That's ethical. It avoids the grey area of harm, and it's our job as health practitioners to follow those principles. And then if you follow the F words, then you pretty much have everything.
The key ingredients.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the other thing is that, we are all continuing to learn and to develop our knowledge base, and it's not a static thing, it's a fluid thing. And hopefully this podcast helps to stimulate your expanding your knowledge base, and it's something that we'll continue to do as well. And we hope that you'll continue to listen and grow with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as Egmar Longo said, being evidence-based is like a dance. You're dancing along to the music, and when the music changes, you just change your rhythm a bit, but you just keep dancing along. And I love that. I feel like that one stuck to me a fair bit, but I do also like to dance when no one's watching. So that's part of it too. But look, everyone, thank you so much for listening to us this year. We would really appreciate any reviews that you have as well. Just one as feedback. And secondly, just to sort of increase the reach so more people who need to hear this information can also access it as well.
That's the most important thing. And like you say, if you give us a review, it helps us learn more about what you would like to see in the coming season.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Oh my goodness. Let's put an end to this part of the podcast for 2021. Yeah. Thank you, Ash, for going on this journey with me as well. It's been so much fun to do this with you.
It really has. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, like I said, there's no one else I'd rather do it with.
That's cool. Well, get ready for those icebreaker questions for 2022.
I'm going to have to spend the whole break preparing.
Merry Christmas to everyone and Happy New Year. Stay safe and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Happy holidays. Bye.